What will we talk about today, I wonder, in our magic session? It's Tuesday, and it is 7 p.m. Eastern, which is my usual time to go live every week. And I can't believe it's Tuesday already. I wonder how your week is going. Let me know in the comments. Is it a crazy busy, overwhelming week, or is it like overwhelming in a good way? Or you have lots of stuff going on? I'm curious because it feels like it's overwhelming for everybody, but some people it's overwhelming in a not good way, and some people it's overwhelming in a good way. Very, very curious. Hello, welcome. Hi, Deanna. Anyway, I'm here to talk about vocal magic stuff. Not my program, but anything that you guys want to talk about. Something that's been coming up a lot in my sessions this week is just holding the space for freedom altogether and creating an environment for yourself which can help you physically get out of the way. So I've been talking a lot about the tube idea this week, and if you don't know what the tube idea is, that's okay because it's kind of my speak. And where I think of the vocal mechanism as this golden tube. So like all the way up, all the way from the bottom of your lungs, through your lungs, through your rib cage, through your chest, through your neck and your pharynx and your mouth and everything. It is a tube. And we want the tube to stay nice and open as long as we can, as much as we can, because that's how the air comes through nicely. That's how the pressure stays nice and even and balanced. It's also a helpful metaphor to think about not tightening up here very much, which is like everybody's go-to. Not everybody, but most people's go-to is when we're trying to sing something that we perceive as difficult, whether it's a high note or whether it's a run or whether it's just a long note or something. We tend to cut ourselves off early, whether it's because we feel like we need to effort more, we need to try really hard to get that note, or we think we need to stop singing in order to save our breath or in order to just be sure that we're going to hit the note and not wait too long if we're afraid that we are not going to make it all the way to the end, if we're worried about our breath support. So there's lots of different reasons why things can come in and mess with our muscles here, our vocal muscles, our laryngeal muscles that get in the way. They're not necessarily predisposed to getting in the way. It's just that when we feel like we have to work so hard to hit a note or something, then all of a sudden what's happening in here is sending a message to these muscles in here that we have to work really hard. And so then these muscles start to work really hard and tighten. And when these tighten, it can pull on the vocal folds and pull them away from each other. It can pull the larynx into places that it doesn't need to be. It just tightens everything. And we don't need that tightness. In fact, it can sometimes be really harmful when we're trying to sing a note like a high note or a run or something. We need the looseness and the flexibility for the chords to come all the way together and or for the larynx to move really quick as in a run or something. So that needs to be our primary focus, is this tube, right? We're keeping the tube nice and open, which means these muscles on the outside are not engaging, they're not pushing and pulling your larynx in weird directions, they're not trying to stretch your vocal folds farther than they need to be stretched, because that's another thing that happens when we reach for a high note or something. We're really trying to get it, to effort it, and then we really stretch and we overstretch. It's like we're overstretching a rubber band because we think we need to hit that note because our brain has come to think that that note is too high, and in order to hit a too high note, we have to really strain and effort and when we're trying really hard, we tend to like tighten up and scrunch up and everything. I had a couple students in a row that were pole vaulters, and they both told me that they're so used to preparing in that way in order to get over a pole. So like they have to be tight and they have to put all their effort behind it in order to get their body all the way over the pole in such a way that you're not going to hit it. So like you can't be just all loosey-goosey everywhere because you're going to knock it over with your hand or your foot or something. And so that's how they're used to going for height. And so it translated into their singing with, oh, I have a high note. I better muscle up my entire body and try and force that into existence. Right? So a lot of times our brain's preconceived notions of what it takes to sing is not correct because we haven't actually experienced the freedom of that high note yet without all that effort. We don't know how it's supposed to work because we haven't ever experienced it in that way. Like we don't have the evidence, literally. And so our brain goes, oh, we gotta freaking get all hands on deck here and tighten up and make that high note happen. And so that's what happens is we go, ah, right? And we tighten up and we get these muscles involved, or we let these muscles be involved. And then they do their thing. They pull apart the cords. They stretch too much. They just over push and over effort and over tense. Now, when we're singing high, there's going to be a little bit of tension just because of the nature of high notes. Like you are stretching a rubber band, but we don't want to overstretch the rubber band, if that makes sense. So what we need to think about when we're reaching for big notes, long notes, high notes, runs, that kind of thing. We just have to be careful not to let the mind run away with the thoughts of what we think we have to do to hit that, if that makes sense. So if we can head it off at the pass, right? So if our mind is going, ooh, that's a high note coming, I gotta really get ready and prepare and squeeze everything I got into it. We have to notice that happening. We have to be super in our body and notice, oh, I can sense that tightness happening. I can hear the voice in my head going, I gotta tighten up, and I know better because of my training, because of my evidence, and I am going to switch gears and I'm going to focus on keeping this tube open. I'm going to focus everything I have on relaxing in here and getting out of the way. Everything above my bottom rib, I'm going to focus on super relaxing, keeping it chill. Not letting that instinct come in that says we need to try so hard and effort so hard and pull and push in order to get that high note, because we know from taking voice lessons or whatever that the way to get those harder notes, those extra moments, the runs and rips and long notes, big belty moments, anything that you see somebody else doing that you're like, I can do that, but it like your body says by looking at them that we got to try really hard. And that is absolutely not the case. Usually it's the opposite, because your body knows how to make all these noises without any of that effort, but we add all this pressure onto it. We think singing needs to be this big deal. We have to push everything we have into it, into those high notes and those big notes, but we really need to do the opposite. We got to get the heck out of the way of our vocal folds. We have to let our beautiful mechanism do what it was born to do, right? So we have to be really in it when we're singing. We can't take our eyes off our mind for a moment, because the mind, as soon as it gets a chance, because of many decades of habit, it's going to bring it in to that scared place. It's the fear place that says, nope, I gotta effort harder, otherwise I'm not gonna make that note. And what happens when you get it? Oops, there we go. What happens when you try and effort your way into those high notes? Tightness and scratchiness, and the tube is closed. It's like this. Like go to sing a high note like you're giving every muscle in your body a squeeze. You don't actually have to sing it, but I just remembered my tongue is green because I was eating green candy. So you go for it. Can you feel your pharynx close? It's like when you bite down on a straw. You go, and then it takes a lot more effort to get that liquid out. right? You have to go, and it comes a lot slower. Same thing with your pharynx. If you close it down like that, the diameter doesn't change. Like the amount of air that can come through doesn't change. It just is more difficult. It takes a lot more effort. And so what we want to do is keep an eye on the pharynx, the tube. Lungs too, you can close your lungs off at any point by going, right? You can close your mouth off by doing vowels in a weird way. So the tube is many different parts, but most of the time it's our mind thinking we have to do way more work in order to get to where we're going to go than we actually need to, and it closes off the tube. So hopefully that makes sense. So technically, we're coming at it from a point of, I don't need so much efforting to make this note, run, belt happen. And my job is to stay out of the way. My job is to keep my eye on my mind and to stop that mechanism immediately before it starts, right? The mechanism that goes in a millisecond, ooh, that's a hard note, I got to try really hard. And the vocal muscles respond by tightening up. We have to be able to see it coming, and we have to stop it ahead of time. So we have to know how we're going to approach those notes, which is why practice and rehearsal helps, which is why having a coach helps to mirror back to you what you need to do in order to hit those notes, those difficult ones that you're trying to reach. So like if you're reading along the sheet music, or if you know a big note is coming, and you start to feel that fear kind of creep in, you're like, oh, here it comes. Here's the big note. It's like preparing for a hurdle and like curling into a little ball. It's not going to get you anywhere, right? It has to be this openness, this trust in your body. And that trust will get you to a point where you can stop that signal, right? So you can, instead of being like, oh, I got to try really hard to hit that note, you can be like, oh no, I got this. I know the way, and the way is to open and relax. You know? Hopefully that helps. That's something that a lot of my students have been dealing with lately. The other parts of this tube, this golden tube, I like to call it the golden tube because it's fun. The other parts that I mentioned just briefly was the breathing part, the lung part of the tube. A lot of times when I tell people to take a deep breath, they go, they get all Darth Vader-y and they tighten up because they feel like they're sucking more air in. Then you build up your chest really high and you do that. However, do you think that actually gets you more air? The answer is no. It just creates a smaller straw, right? You're creating a smaller straw and you're just doing more work to get that air in. And so this is why I have my students practice breathing through an open mouth, because that's what's going to help remind your body that it doesn't have to work so dang hard to do the correct kind of breathing that we need for singing and speaking too. So if you can just, if you're watching, and even if you're watching the replay, you can do this with me. So just put your hand on your chest, put your hand on your belly. You can close your eyes if it helps. Relax your shoulders, relax your chest. And we're with an open mouth. Imagine that open tube. You're just creating a little extra space in your lower belly. You're releasing your lower belly muscles, letting the air flow in and letting the air flow out. Nothing changes about the tube. You're just keeping an open tube, letting the air flow in without doing any extra work. You're just releasing. You're releasing the low belly muscles in order to create space for the air. And at the top of the exhale, you're releasing in order to just release that air out. You don't have to push any air out. You don't have to go, you don't have to do any of that. You can feel that it closes the tube in certain parts. So what we need is just an open tube all the way through. Inhale, top of the inhale, exhale, bottom of the exhale. All the way through, we want that openness, because if you have a tight tube and you go to sing, what's going to happen? You're going to be singing from this place instead of this place. And so even in the middle of notes, in the breath parts and your silence, we want to keep an open tube as well. So you're preparing to sing from a place of openness as well. So that is another really important thing to think about. And honestly, the belly breath will help remind your body that it doesn't need to do so much work in general. Even when you're just sitting on the couch, it can be helpful to do this practice. To stop sucking in air, just release, release, release on both sides. And it will remind your body that you can breathe with very little effort, which is what we want when you're singing. We don't want you to be hyperventilating, hypoventilating. When you're singing, we want it to be super natural and easy, because you got to save your energy for the actual singing part, right? You got to fuel up in a very efficient way, because sometimes you have a millisecond to breathe almost in between words, right? And it has to be that easy to just let the drop in the bucket happen, right? You're just, oh my God, vague surprise is what I call it. Oh my God, you bought me a muffin. How nice. That's how I describe that little recovery belly breath. And the last part of the tube that I think is really important is, of course, everything above the vocal folds, which is your pharynx, but not so much having to do with these muscles. It has to do with the mouth and the jaw and what's happening in here. So your articulators, as we call them, your mouth and your teeth and your lips and your tongue and your jaw, they can get in the way of this beautiful open tube as well. I like to think of the mouth as like the bell of a trumpet, right? So like if the rest of you is the inner workings, those curly parts of the trumpet on the inside, your mouth is where the sound exits the instrument, and it's also what amplifies and makes the sound different. So if you think about that, like there's a reason why trumpets don't have a little teeny end, but they go into a big bell in order to let the sound fully express itself. And this is what we're doing here. We're expressing our sound that we're creating in here, we're shaping it in here. And so this part of the tube has to be somewhat open as well. And of course, it's not always going to be super open, because we're making words. We are creating different vowels. We're creating different consonants. We're creating meaning, which a trumpet cannot do. It can't create words, although it gets pretty close sometimes with those wah, wah, wah mutes. It's pretty fun. But what I'm talking about is more, how do we get out of the way and stop closing off that sound and the breath and the tube with our mouth? So a lot of times vocal teachers, especially if they are opera or classically trained, they'll tell you like the only right way to do it is to just make your vowels super tall and just go ha, he, ho, ooh. And that's, sure, it's very nice and relaxed in here. It doesn't close the tube off at all. It's great. It's really good. Doesn't really work for pop music though, right? You can't just go around singing Taylor Swift going, oh, my cardigan. You know, it doesn't doesn't sound the same. It doesn't work the same way. So if you're singing pop music, I want you just to think of like those tall vowels instead as just relaxing your jaw, because this is really what gets in the way super often. Like if you think about when you're chewing, like if you pretend you're chewing right now, these muscles to get in the way, you can feel them start to tense up in here. It all connects, right? And so when we tense up, we're often closing off the tube in a different way than we would even expect. And in American English especially, we tend to do this a lot with R's and L's. Like you can feel if you do a really hard R, you can feel those muscles start to tighten up. Your tongue starts to tighten, and you can tighten your tongue even more. And you can feel it connect on the bottom of your tongue here, and which also connects down here. So it's all messing with the mechanism. It's all closing the tube. And so we have to be really careful how much weight and how much work we put into, dang it, Instagram. How much work we put into those vowels and the consonants. So a lot of times I'm just reminding people over and over again to get way more lazy with their enunciation, especially in pop music. Opera, classical is a different story. But in pop music, a lot of times we will try and enunciate it like we do when we're speaking in order to be understood. But the thing about pop music is that people who are listening to you have been listening to pop music their entire lives. And so they understand even if it's just subconsciously, that words are different in music. And so, like when you have an R at the end of a word, most often you'll hear somebody go, ah, right? If I was saying the word super, I wouldn't say super. Look how small my mouth and how tight my tongue is on the inside. Super. I'm going to go super, super. I'm not going full British, but I'm trying to relieve that tension in here. Super. You can still have a little essence of an R on there, but most people, especially if it's a long note, super. I don't know any song that ends in super, but that's what's coming to mind. And so that is, people will automatically imply what word you're saying, and it's not a big deal. We don't have to over enunciate if it's going to close the tube. Hopefully that makes sense. Most pop songs now, like, you can get away with saying things how you normally say them with maybe just a little extra relaxation in your jaw, unless it's a big high belty note or a big high head voice note, in which case we're going to have to adjust it a little more in order for the tone to come first. One of my things that I always say is tone before lyrics. The note that you're singing has to take precedence over the lyrics that you're saying. Because if the note isn't there, nobody's going to care what word you're saying, right? They're just going to hear that really tight, struggly sounding note. And they are not looking to understand. They're just hoping that you can survive that note, right? Most of the audiences are on your side. They're not judging you for sounding bad. They just want to hear that it's easy for you. Like, human beings tap into struggle in vocals. Like, this is why our voices were created, to communicate how things work, how easy something is for me. And so we can hear when somebody adds a little bit of tension on their voice. We can tell they're straining, like, like you can tell I'm straining to do something. Like if I lean down and I go, then you're like, are you okay? Because you can hear the strain and the tightness in your voice. So most people, most audiences that you're going to be singing for are not judging you based on your notes. However, they are listening for struggle. And so we want the tone to be super light and easy, super beautiful and open and breezy. Which is why we want to get out of the way, create this open tube first, and then we add the essence of the lyric that we're trying to say on top of that. This doesn't really need to happen most of the times in the middle of your range. You can sing most things how you would normally say them with maybe just a little extra opening. However, when you're at the extremes of your range, the bottom, the top, high belt, high register, up there, you'll know when you need to add a little more space, when it starts to feel tight. That's when we need to adjust the vowels and adjust what's happening in our little trumpet bell to make it a little less tight, because these muscles are all connected to the vocal folds. So if you're tight here, chances are you're going to be tight in here, and you're not going to be able to let your beautiful mechanism do what it needs to do what it does best, because we're getting in the way. We're putting an extra block with our vowels and consonants that we don't even realize we're doing. As American English speakers, if you are an American English speaker, it's hard. It's hard to get out of this usual habit of how we speak, because we speak very tight, very flat. Like, think about how tall you open your mouth on a daily basis, unless you like work with little children and you're teaching them how to speak or something. Like, it's very small. We barely open our mouths at all. Like, we're very mumbly people. And so it's hard for us to learn how to do this without feeling vulnerable. I mean, for me, when I open my mouth, I've gotten used to it, and I know that it's necessary to get certain notes out. I need to open my mouth vertically in a certain way. But for a lot of people, it's a very scary thing to do beginning. When you're first beginning to level up your singing, to grow as a singer, you start to realize that what I have been doing has not been serving me. It has been closing the tube. It's been clamping down. It's been cutting off notes, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, just because of the way I'm used to speaking, I'm used to singing. It just happens. And so we have to get out of our habit. We have to get out of our own head. We have to say, okay, I'm making a commitment to the tone first, to my note first to my breath support first to ease first. Ease first. Focus on the feeling first. If you remember nothing else that I tell you today, focus on the feeling instead of the sound of what you're singing. Seriously, it's my favorite magic trick ever. Like, it's really hard to do because we're so focused on how it sounds and we're so used to judging ourselves and comparing ourselves to what you think it should sound like. But if you can get out of that mindset for just 5 minutes at a time and you focus on the feeling and you are making your priority ease in here at all costs, you start to feel where all this tension comes in. If you just go, sing in your car, you're probably not paying attention. But if you take a moment to focus on singing the same song that you just sang in your car with ease, with utmost ease, you'll notice. I had a student today who she was singing at work and singing by herself, and it felt really great. Doing her thing, super open, no tension, sounded great. She got in front of me and the nerves started to kick in. And what happens when nerves start to kick in is this goes crazy. It goes, oh, I need to be working. I need to be putting in work to impress this person so I don't sound bad in front of them, right? And this is part of your gremlin voices, and that's a whole other topic that I talk about all the time. But this is directly connected to your mechanism. And so when you're nervous, your mouth may start to get dry. You start to realize you have a little more jaw tension. You start to suck in more air more heavily, but you don't need to. So there's automatically like 10% more tension than there was in your body. And if you sing from that, there's going to be tightness. There's going to be closing of the tube happening. And there's going to be notes that feel harder to reach. And even if you reach them, they might not be on pitch. And so this is a totally normal thing. It's not a reflection on you as a singer. You are still a talented person. You still have a good ear. It's just that your body is doing the thing that it has been trained to do its whole life. It's instinctually trained and born to do this. When you have a perceived threat, you tighten up. That's just what your body does. Nerves come in. Oh, somebody's listening to me. They might think I'm bad and they might kick me out of the group. That's your biological system is saying that. And so then your body goes to tight mode, right? About to run away mode. And then it makes it that much harder to sing from and that much harder to get out of the way and let the chords do their beautiful thing. Hopefully this is making sense. That was a whole lot in half an hour. But basically, the most important thing to remember is keep your tube open as much as you can, this golden tube. Get out of the way. Focus on the feeling instead of the sound. Hopefully that helps. Oh, awesome, Monarch. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, it really helps. Even the most professional singers that I've worked with forget this, right? We're so judgmental and we're so nitpicky about ourselves when we're singing, especially the professional singers. Man, we are so bad to ourselves. And so if we can get out of that for a little bit and remember to just focus on the feeling, let our instrument do what it knows how to do best. And however you need to remind yourself to do that, whether it's just talking, making weird character sounds, the way to remind your body to chill the F out is to take the pressure of singing off of it. So we put singing in such a box, right? We think singing has to be this way, it has to be so hard, and we have all these preconceived notions of watching singers on TV for many years, watching them do all their crazy things and effort. And so we translate that as, oh, I got to effort. I got to try real hard to get over this pole, right? If you weren't here for my pole vaulting story, go back and watch that. But it really is counterintuitive. And so we really have to do a lot of brain training. Most of what I do is helping people train their brain to stop getting in the way, to stop focusing on the sound and stop nitpicking and manipulating the sound before it even comes out of your mouth. Hopefully that's helpful. Sorry, I got to change my Instagram timer. So yeah, there you go. That's my thing for today. Get out of the way. I'm here if you have any questions about all this. I love to talk about it. It's my favorite thing to talk about. I'm here whenever. If you are interested in doing some sessions with me, let me know. Always, my DMs are always open for that. if you are not there yet and you want to just like find your way into my world a little slower, you can go to my bio. There's a link in there. I have a little mini ebook for you. It's called 3 Magic Tricks to Sing Better in Seconds. Focus on the Feeling is in there. I will just tell you that I gave you a freebie today. I mean, the ebook is free, so it doesn't really matter. But go check that out. I really think you'll like it. Talks about the mechanics of the breathing as well. And then one more magic trick that I think you'll like as well. And then you'll be in my world. And the next step is just to enjoy my stupid emails and my silly, ridiculous metaphors that I use all the time, just like you heard today. And I'm here for you. I want to be your vocal fairy godmother. It's what I like to call myself. All right. Yeah, that's all I got for you today. I just started my next cohort of Vocal Magic program. So that's happening for the next 6 months. The next thing I do, I'm thinking it's going to be a slightly less commitment heavy version of that. So if you have been watching me for a while and you're like, Vocal Magic sounds awesome and I want to do it, it's just such a big commitment time-wise and financially. I got something I'm excited to give to you in the next couple months. So stay tuned for that. But if you're on my list, if you go get the mini ebook, you'll be on my list and you can find your way into my community, which is a very low commitment way to be in my world. I'm just opening it up for more people. But it is a community and I want you to participate. So you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready to share. You don't necessarily have to share your voice, but I want to hear you share your experience around your voice. And that you'll get an email in the next couple weeks about that when you're in my world. Okay, cool. I love you very much and I will see you very soon. I'm here next Tuesday, every Tuesday. Cool, thanks. I'm so excited to have you in there, Monarch. That's awesome. Yeah, focus on the feeling. It's like it reminds me of that Carly Rae Jepsen song. I wanna go to the feeling. Super pop.